Hey everybody, welcome to the Wise Podcast. My name is Adam McLean. It is Easter week. You notice I got my shirt. Oh, first of all, I got a collar, and I'm all buttoned up. This is my senior pastor outfit. Of course, I do have on my shorts, because this is YS. That's how we do it. Anyways, we're going to get you off to our tip this week. It comes from Jay. He's talking all about tech.
Today we're going to talk about a question that also comes up very often when people talk about using media in youth ministry, and that is, how can I prepare better looking graphics? And that relates to text and pictures for the most part. Let's start with text. First of all, even if you're using PowerPoint to create your graphics, the idea is to not make your graphics look like they're being created in PowerPoint or displayed. One of the things that really helps graphics or text to be much more readable on the projection screen or on your video screen is to use drop shadows. Always, always use a dark drop shadow. Black is the best, and put a light color, face color on the text. That separates your text from whatever background it's on and makes it much, much more readable. Also, stay away from fonts that are thin and have thin lines like little serifs, they're called, like Times New Roman. Not a good font for video. Use other fonts like Tahoma or Impact or Copper Gothic. Even Arial Bold is a good, easy to read font, although it's overused a lot. And in fact, watch TV tonight and watch what kind of fonts they use and how they design them so that they're very readable. Also, watch the background. Make sure whatever background you have your font on top of, whether it's a live video camera, a motion background, or a still image, that there's a lot of contrast behind the background and behind the text so that the text and the background separate each other from one another. Well, let's talk about pictures real quick. One of the things you can do really easy in Photoshop and other programs is to make soft edges, feathered edges, or jagged edges with your paintbrush, a digital paintbrush. And you can make very pleasing still images to use in print or even on the video projection screen and in your own videos that you produce. The goal is to get away from the boxy kind of square, rectangular looking pictures that we've all done and maybe are still doing, but to make the images look much more photorealistic and artsy, if you would, and much more engaging to the viewers. It's not a life-changing tip, but it's something that can help keep our media looking more engaging and more professional, and therefore perhaps more effective. A couple other aspects to creating better effective looking graphics has to do with the size of your text. Hopefully we've all learned that through the 90s, that the size of the font needs to be large enough for people to read. Most of us design our text sitting 18 or 20 inches from a computer screen where they look very nice and crisp, but when we blow them up on the big screen, they can be very hard to read. One other key principle of creating pleasant or fun-looking graphics has to do with the choice of color. Try not to use the color red in your font because the color red doesn't translate well with our current American television system. You won't see the color red in many fonts on tonight's television, and so don't use that color. In fact, one of the best little tips I can give you for selecting your font color is to choose the color of your font from the background itself, and therefore it will match perfectly. You'll probably need to add a contrasting drop shadow or an outer glow or even a stroke, which is an edging around the font itself, which you can easily do in Photoshop Elements or other paint programs as well. And that will help your fonts look much more readable, as well as an opportunity to communicate your message more clearly. So get those kids involved that have the gifts and skills already in PowerPoint and Photoshop and other paint programs like Paint.net is a free program, or even GIMP, G-I-M-P, is a free Photoshop wannabe graphic design program. And your fonts and your graphics and your pictures will go up to the next level.
Thanks for that, Jay. Now we're going to go off to Marco. He's got part 2 of his series from Proverbs.
Hey, Marco here, bringing you part 2 of a 4-part devotional series from the book of Proverbs. Last week we talked about this great little verse from the book of Proverbs that I just really love. Let me read it to you to get going in case you weren't part of the podcast last week. Proverbs chapter 30, verses 24 through 28 says, 4 things on earth are small, yet they are extremely wise. Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer. Conies are creatures of little power, and yet they make their home in the crags. Locusts have no king, yet they advance together in ranks. And a lizard can be caught in the hand, yet is found in the king's palaces. And I want to remind you that this is a passage that I think speaks to us as youth workers, as individual followers of God, but it's also a passage that's just really cool to talk about with your teenagers. So I want to encourage you to both listen today for how God might speak to you in your own life, but also to rip this off, man, and use this, use these ideas when you're talking to your junior hires and high schoolers. So last week we talked about the ants, how the ants are known for their wisdom, and that their wisdom shows up that even though they don't have a lot of strength, they make decisions for today with the future in mind, and how you and I can exhibit the same kind of wisdom, even though as youth workers, we're often in places with very little strength, very little ability to change our churches or change the context in which we're doing ministry, and yet we can make decisions with the future in mind. Today I want to look at this funny little creature called the coney. Now, the coney is sometimes called like a rock badger or something like that. It's probably easiest for us to think of as it's like a cousin to the prairie dog. So it's a small, furry little animal like a guinea pig or a prairie dog or something like that. And they live in these the desert environments of the Middle East. And as the passage says, they have little power. They're really weak. They don't have any natural defense systems. They don't have big sharp teeth or claws or anything like that. And they are the natural food of quite a few predators, including hawks and wild big cats that used to exist in that region at that time and other things like that. And so they really don't have a whole lot of ability to defend themselves. And in such, they created this kind of whole social network in how they defend their whole community. The main thing that they do is that they make their home in the crags. They live in the cracks between large rocks. So you can picture in a desert context large rock formations that have cracks in them that a bird of prey or another wild animal predator couldn't get to them. And so they make their home in these spaces, and then listen to this, the conies never stray more than like 20 yards from their home. They know the safe distance that they can go out in order to have enough time to get back, and they post little sentinel conies to watch for predators, and they give out little chirpy sounds and stuff to warn each other when they need to get back. Here's the thing that I think is just, it's a beautiful little word picture that we have here. First of all, these things are creatures of little power. So many of us as youth workers are creatures of little power. And in your church, I think you often feel like you don't have the ability or the respect or the relationships, I'm not sure what it is, maybe a combination of those, to really bring about significant or sustainable change in your church and in your context. And we don't have a lot of power, many of us. But I also want to suggest that just like last week with the ants, having little power is actually a really beautiful and good place to be, because in God's economy, God loves to work in and through those with little power. We see it all through Scripture. Here's the wisdom of the conies. They know that their safety is in the rock. And of course we know in the Bible the rock is a great word picture for the strength of God. And that as you and I, as creatures of little power, know that our safety is in the rock, as we stay close and connected to God, that even when we go through life a little bit exposed and in places where we really don't have a natural defense system against the things that would look to devour us, we know that our safety is in the rock. And if we stay connected deeply to God, then we have that natural protection, that natural place of hiding, that natural place of comfort and safety in our lives, and that makes all the difference. So I want to encourage you today to think about your own connection to the rock, to God, and also to consider talking to your students about what it means for them to stay deeply connected to God, to the rock, and to realize their safety and their protection is offered as we go through this challenging life by staying connected to God. That's our thought for today. We're going to return next week with the locusts. Later.
Thanks for watching the show. As always, I want to invite you to connect with me. You can send me an email at adam@youthspecialties.com, or look me up on any of these social networks that are out there like Facebook or MySpace or Twitter, or we even have an account on Webkins. We want to remind you, just like we do every week, that your ministry matters. We know you don't hear it enough from parents and students and people that work at the church or just people that come to the church. But your ministry matters. It matters deeply to your parents, your students, but most importantly, it matters to the heart of God. Thanks for what you do, and we'll see you next week.